Is anybody still there? Did anybody come back? It's been a while. It's been a while, but welcome back to the Tism Talks podcast, video edition. One thing I said I'd never do when I started podcasting, and that was make visual podcasts, because in my head, a podcast should be something you can listen to. It should just be something that you can be doing absolutely anything and you can just be listening to it. But for some reason, in recent years, the podcast market has just taken over with video podcasts, and I think people forget that podcasting started as this audio thing, as this audio file that you could listen to while you were doing absolutely anything, and if you weren't watching it, you weren't missing out on anything, because it was just like listening to a song. You didn't need to be watching anything. But nevertheless, times have changed, and so must we. So I'm bringing you Tism Talks video edition. If you're not watching this on video and you are just planning on listening along, that is absolutely fine. I will try and keep this as visually friendly as possible, because I do appreciate that podcasts are meant to be enjoyed audio style, and most of the podcasts I listen to, I do enjoy audio style, so I will try and keep this as audio friendly as I possibly can. But welcome back. I missed you. I hope you missed me, and I'm hoping this episode can be somewhat of a welcome back, a little talk about where I've been, and a little talk about what's to come. So first of all, starting with where I've been and what this podcast has been up to, or not up to, in the last couple of years, really. So the last episode of Tism Talks, I believe, was uploaded in April 2024, which, if you're watching this, listening to this, whatever, see, I said I was trying to make it audio friendly, and I'm already saying watch it. If you're watching/listening to this when it's coming out, then April 2024 will be over 2 years ago now, which is kind of crazy, because it honestly doesn't feel that long since I picked up the microphone and spoke to you. I think the reason that it's been so long is because I've been through a hell of a lot in the last 2 years, and a lot has happened. So when I last picked up the microphone, I had just been diagnosed autistic. I received my diagnosis on March 21st, 2024, and I believe the last episode that I recorded was on April 2nd, or was published anyway on April 2nd, 2024, which was Autism Acceptance Day / part of Autism Acceptance Month. And I posted that to I can't remember exactly what I talked about. Go and listen to that, remind me if you will. I can't remember exactly what I talked about in that episode of the podcast, but I'm assuming it was me kind of freshly diagnosed and my thoughts on the diagnosis process. At the time, though, I didn't really have a lot of understanding about what it meant to be diagnosed with autism, and honestly, 2 years on, I can hold my hands up and say I still don't fully understand what it means to be diagnosed with autism. I think it's as much of a journey for me as it is for everybody else that I let know that I'm autistic, because when I tell people that I'm autistic, they kind of expect me to explain to them what that means to me, but I don't always fully understand what it means to me, so I can't really explain it to other people, because it's a journey, and it's a journey that I've only been on for 2 years properly now, because for the most part of my life, I've known that there was something different about me, and I've known that I didn't behave, I didn't act, I didn't think, speak, do the same way that most people did. But I couldn't put a name to it, and I couldn't put a reason to it. So I think being diagnosed autistic answered a lot of questions in that sense, but it doesn't give you a solution to it. It doesn't make you feel different as much as it helps you to understand why you feel different. It doesn't stop you feeling different. And I think a lot of misconception around the diagnosis process is that it cures you almost to be diagnosed. It doesn't. It helps you, it supports you, it can massively assist you in terms of accessing resources, accessing help, access to work scheme, access to various benefits and things like that to get help with your disability. But it doesn't cure you, and it doesn't make the autism go away, is the key part that I want people to understand. Just because I've been diagnosed now doesn't mean that all of my problems fade away. It doesn't mean I stop having meltdowns. It doesn't mean I stop having shutdowns. It doesn't mean I stop masking. It doesn't mean I stop having burnout. I'm still me. I'm still autistic. I just understand this about myself now, so I can workshop ways to. God, I hate the corporate jargon that I use sometimes. Did I really just say workshop? I can think of ways to manage it, and I can understand ways of managing it, and I know a little bit more. Key on little bit more. I know a little bit more how my brain works, and I understand a little bit more why I feel so different and why I do things so differently. And I think when I recorded that episode, I was still so fresh into this diagnosis process. I'd just been diagnosed. I'd just received this diagnosis. And I don't like to use the word diagnosis too much because it sounds very clinical. And it sounds like it's, like I've been handed a life sentence or something, or like I'm going to die when I say diagnosis. It almost saved me, in a way, without getting too deep. It almost made me a different person. And I feel like a new chapter of my life started on the day that I was diagnosed autistic, because I'd been living 20 years of my life not knowing so much about myself. So for them from chapter 20 to understand why I am the way I am, why so many things are different about me, why I struggle to make eye contact, why I hate small talk, why I wish people would just get to the point sometimes, why I don't enjoy the social aspect of some activities that other people just seem to love, why I prefer direct instruction, why I need somebody to write something down for me, otherwise I won't remember it, or take it on board, things like that. Why people have always treated me like an outcast when I've tried to fit into their group, why I get left out of group settings and I don't fit into group conversations as well. It gave me so many answers, and it changed me as a person, because that understanding, when you understand something about yourself and you go on this journey of self-growth and self-love and self-learning almost, it really helps you to foundation that belief that you are okay and you're doing okay and you're doing fine and there's nothing wrong with you. I think that was the key when I received my diagnosis. There was nothing wrong with me. There was never anything wrong with me. I didn't need to know that there was anything wrong with me. I just needed to know what it was about me and why it made me feel the way that I'd feel. And I don't like to use past tense words, because coming back to the point that getting a diagnosis doesn't cure you and it doesn't fix you, I don't like to say I struggled or it made me feel in the past, because it still makes me feel, and I still do struggle. I still have meltdowns. I still have shutdowns. I still have to mask on a daily basis because certain societal expectations don't allow me to be my fully authentic autistic self in certain social situations. But it helps me understand why I do that. So I think 2 years on, the main difference from me recording that episode on the second day of Autism Acceptance Month in 2024 to recording this 2 years and 2 months on, if my maths is correct. Yeah, 2 months and 2 years on, in June 2026, 2 months after Autism Acceptance Day 2026, I feel I can be a lot more open and honest about my autism. I don't feel as ashamed to admit that I'm autistic, which is something else we can unpack if we need to. I don't feel as embarrassed to admit I'm autistic, and I feel a lot more able to confront the fact that I'm autistic. I think when I was first diagnosed, I saw it as this boundary I had to overcome. I saw it as something that I almost had to tackle, to defeat, to hide away about myself. Even though I'd spent so long searching for those answers, when I was given that answer, it was, oh, is that really the answer I wanted? Because I'm going to be stuck with this for the rest of my life now. But it did help, and it did make me feel so much more in touch with myself. I've just realised my mug has been in frame the entire time, and I think that says so much about me. This is my little Andy Samberg mug that my friend Millie got me for my birthday a few years ago. You should make yourself a cup of tea while you're listening to this. And if you don't like tea, what the hell is wrong with you? I went on a course this morning, and the woman that was sat next to me was like, I don't drink tea, I don't really like tea. I was like, I was like personally offended. I was like, excuse me? Honestly, when people say they don't like tea, I take it really personally. Like, I'm not asking if you want a cup of tea, I'm just wondering if you do like tea, and they're like, I don't like tea. I'm like, what? Funny thing is, Millie, who gave me this mug, I don't think she likes tea. So I'm gonna try and not take that personally. Anyway, diversion aside, the main aim when I started Tism Talks was to have an open and honest space to talk about anything that I wanted to talk about, because I've tried the podcast format so many times in the past and it hasn't worked because I've been making podcasts about things that I didn't feel entirely passionate about. I didn't have a lot of, depth or space or area or knowledge to talk about. I was trying to make it like a problem solving thing. You might know, if you've been familiar with my podcast in the past, a few of the names that floated around the time were Voyage of Curiosity. I had to start with, I think was my premiere podcast, whatever you want to call it, my first ever podcast. I basically tried to answer the big questions. Girl, you were like 17 at the time. What bloody authority do you have to be answering the big questions? I was like researching into areas of expertise that I had no previous knowledge in or no previous interest in, really. So I decided, I think I did that for about 6 months, that was pretty good. But again, like I say, I was 17 at the time, so who even knew? It was very experimental. I then changed it to a podcast called How's That? I have no idea what that was about. I have no idea what I was doing with that. I don't remember what the format of that was or what we were even talking about there, but that was something else. And then I changed it to the AC podcast, I believe, very, very briefly. And I then changed it to Tism Talks. And I don't want this to be strictly a podcast about autism, but I want it to be a podcast that centres around the idea about living as an autistic person, and that living as an autistic person is okay, and normalising living with autism, because I think a lot of us have a very limited understanding of autism, and that's absolutely fine. Okay, I'm admitting to you that is absolutely fine. I'm letting you know that that's absolutely fine. If you're listening to this and you know barely anything about autism, that's absolutely fine. You are very welcome here, because I think we don't get taught about it. We don't have a capacity to learn about it unless we educate ourselves, which is the case for a lot of things. But I think for something that's as big as autism, as big as a thing it is, and it's a thing that affects about 1 in 10 people, I'm pretty sure. I was in a meeting yesterday. Wednesday. I was in a meeting on Wednesday, and the statistics showed that 1 in 10 people are neurodivergent. And that shocked me, because I honestly didn't think it was that many people. Because when I try and speak to people about it, it's like it's something that they've never heard of, or they've heard of it, they just don't have a great understanding of it. Because I think the understanding that most people have of autism is like naughty little boys, it's usually boys, because the diagnosis criteria was based around boys, and girls were never really even considered into the equation when they came up with the DSM-5, which was the old framework, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry, I will correct myself in the description. The DSM-5 criteria that diagnosed autism, as it was previously known, Asperger's syndrome, and that's a whole other thing that we won't get into. We don't call it that anymore, by the way. For autism was based around boys and the neurology and the psychology that occurred in boys, and it was so never looked into in girls. It was never even considered in girls, because girls naturally have a greater ability to mask, and it's the reason that it's still underdiagnosed in girls and women today. I think it's for every 4 boys that are diagnosed with autism, only 1 girl is diagnosed, and that spoke to me massively, because it's so true. And there's this thing going around on TikTok at the moment, I know, super reliable news source, TikTok, that I keep seeing these autistic women and girls and saying, like, here's a picture of me now, here's a picture, and like it's a picture of their younger selves, and this is the age I would have been diagnosed with autism if I was a boy, and it's a picture of like them at 3 or 4 years old. And I think that that's so true, because I was often picked up for the fact that I was very confident and I was very loud and I was very outgoing as a child. But as soon as I hit adolescence, I changed completely and I went very withdrawn and I became very within myself, and I didn't want to speak to anyone, I didn't want to speak in class, I didn't put my hand up in school anymore. And I think a lot of people around me, especially like teachers and stuff in school, picked up on that, and even like adults and stuff that we'd meet, like mum and dad's friends and things like that, they'd pick up on the fact that I was a lot quieter. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe we'll get into that in a future episode. Things that I went through whilst I was a teenager that could have led to the reason that my personality changed so much. But it meant that I felt like I wasn't myself anymore, and I felt like I had to regain a part of myself. But through a greater understanding of what it means to be autistic, I realised I'd probably been masking all those years, and I realised that the real, authentic me wasn't actually the real, authentic me, and it was probably when I was withdrawn and when I didn't feel like speaking to people that I was just dealing with burnout, and I was just dealing with a great heavy weight of having carried that confidence and carried that outgoingness for all those years that I just couldn't take it anymore. And this really interesting webinar that I went to on Wednesday, referring back to the meeting that I went to on Wednesday, it was all about menopause and neurodiversity, and it basically said that the reason that so many women are being diagnosed autistic, neurodivergent in general, in their late 40s, early 50s, is because menopause actually encourages you to unmask, because it means that the energy that it takes you, and I can't put this into an analogy because it is physically impossible for me to describe how great of a weight masking is on you. The best analogy I can give you is it's like carrying a massive sack of sand around all day, and then unmasking is like finally dropping that sack of sand, if that makes sense. But it basically was saying that the reason that so many women that are of perimenopause or menopausal age get diagnosed autistic or get diagnosed as having a neurodivergent condition is because they can't physically take the strain of masking anymore, and their personality changes, and people think they blame it all on the menopause, but it's actually because they're autistic, or it's actually because they're neurodivergent. They just can't bear the strain of masking anymore. And masking mainly affects autistic people, but it does affect other neurodivergent conditions like ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, other things like that, and other mental conditions as well. But it is mainly autism that you will hear the term masking floating around, because it bears so much strain on us in the social aspect and the speaking to people and the interacting with people. We feel like we can't be ourselves because they won't understand the way that we communicate. And that was really what I wanted to focus on in sort of telling you a bit about what's happened in the last couple of years. Nothing bad, well, a few bad things, but anyway. So after I left you in April 2024, I immediately went through a lot in terms of life, in terms of work, in terms of emotions, because it was exactly 10 days after I posted that episode on the April the 2nd that I lost my job. And I think at the time it felt like an absolute tragedy. It felt like the end of the world. It felt like everything was coming to an end, and it felt like I was never gonna have a success or find a job ever again. Looking back now, it was probably the biggest blessing in disguise. The job I was doing at the time, without getting into too much detail, was not the right fit for me. It was not an industry I was made for, and it was not a skill set that I had a lot of capacity in. And even before I went into the job, I sort of felt like, should I have any prior experience in this? And I did ask the agency that I was working through, did I need any prior experience? And they basically said, no, you'll be fine. They'll give you full training and it will be absolutely fine. Spoiler alert, it was not absolutely fine. I hated going to work. I have never hated going to work more than when I was doing that job. I was only there for about 3 months, I believe, 3 or 4 months. I was there from December 23 to April 24, so just over 4 months probably. And like I say, I've never been more uncomfortable, never more unhappy or hated going to work than I was when I was there. And losing that job at the time, even though I hated it, I was like, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? What do I do? Shortly after I received my autism diagnosis, there was so much going on in my head that I hadn't really had the chance to grapple with that yet. And then losing my job on top of all of that, I felt like the world was coming to an end, and it felt like everything that could possibly go wrong for me was going wrong. I walked home, and the offices to where I worked were quite close to the beach. And without getting too deep and without wanting to seem like this is a cry for help or anything, I just remember walking home and thinking, I want to walk into the sea and never come back. And I think that thought sits with me a lot, because what possible mindset could I have been in to think that I want to walk into the sea and not come back? It reminds me of a bit, I just bring everything back to John Mulaney, honestly. It reminds me of that bit in Kid Gorgeous about, it's about robots. We spend our days telling robots we're not robots. Think about that for 2 seconds and tell me you don't want to walk into the ocean. Like, that's how I felt. But honestly, I just remember thinking, should I walk to the beach and just walk into the sea and not come back? Thankfully, you'll be grateful to know, I did not go to the beach, and I did not walk into the sea and never come back, because I'm here to tell the tale. But I walked home, and I rang my mum, and as we do in times of trouble, I rang my mum, and she didn't pick up. And I don't know about your mum, but does your mum just immediately pick up the phone, usually, when you ring? And I don't ring people very often, because I don't like speaking on the phone. Autism. I don't like speaking to people on the phone, so I don't ring people very often. So when I ring my mum, she knows that something's up. She knows it's either very important or something's wrong. So when she didn't pick up, I got concerned, because she always picks up the phone, usually quite quickly with me, because she's wondering what's wrong, because like I say, I never really phone people, even my mum. I never really phone people. So when she didn't answer, I was like, what is going on? Mum always picks up the phone. What is going on? So I tried ringing her again, and she still didn't pick up. And I texted her, and I said, why aren't you picking up? And she said, I'm at the hairdresser's. I said, oh no. And she said, what's wrong? And I can't remember if I told her over the phone, over text even. I think I did, and she basically was just like, I'm on my way. Like, she was obviously at the hairdresser's, like, had to finish up there. But like, immediately came home and was like, oh my god, like, are you okay? And like, I burst into tears, and I just felt like the world was collapsing around me and I would never find happiness again. Looking back, it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, and I say that with so much hope for you, that if you feel like something's just happened to you and it feels like your world's ending, I promise you, you'll look back and realise it's not as bad as you initially thought it was going to be. Because these things are put here to test us, and these things are put here to try and waver our spirit, and waver our personality, and waver our happiness. But it's the way that we deal with them that matters. So do you know what I did? I took it upon myself to apply for every bloody job on Indeed. Honestly, I have never applied for more jobs in my life. I spent the next 3 or 4 months of my life applying for every single job that I saw, every single job that I could do. I applied for it. I didn't even bother looking at the pay or anything like that. I just applied for it because I just needed a job. Because the thing about me is I'm very much a busybody. I like having something to do. So not having a job meant I went crazy. Because I don't like sitting at home all day. Most people, that's probably their idea of bliss. Like, that's, Gary Barlow, this is my idea of a very nice day out. It was my idea of hell. You could not, I hate sitting at home doing nothing. I hate sitting at home doing nothing. The sun is, blinding me, honestly. But I hate having no purpose to my day. So waking up every single day with absolutely no purpose and nothing to do and nothing to, without sounding too depressing, again, nothing to wake up for, it felt awful. And it felt like the lowest point of my life. And I think I did go through a period of feeling just so low. Just so, not burnt out energy-wise, but burnt out motivation-wise. And I went to a point of do I even need to be applying for jobs, because none of them are saying yes to me. And anyone who's looking for a job or has been looking for a job in the last couple of years will know it feels impossible sometimes to find a job, to find somebody that will say yes to you, to find somebody that will take you on, will even consider you for an interview, that will go past the application stage, anything like that. It feels impossible sometimes. And I think getting that yes can feel like, again, it's a change, it's a massive change. So, fast forward to July 2024, after being rejected from about 20 jobs, I want to say 25 jobs probably, I went for an interview for a admin/secretarial role in my local hospital. I had applied for a few roles in the hospital before this, but this was one I was, I kind of went into it with the mindset of, if I don't get it, like, it doesn't matter, it's just a job, who really cares? Obviously not to make out like I didn't care about it or anything, because, I wanted the job. I went into it with the mindset of, if they say no to me, it obviously wasn't the right thing for me. So I went into it with the mindset of, I want to do well. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be great, and they're gonna like me, and it's gonna be fine. I did the interview. I was terrified because I hadn't done many face-to-face interviews, because, for context, the last few agency jobs that I'd had, all those interviews have been over Teams. So I hadn't really done many face-to-face interviews before. So this being a face-to-face interview felt terrifying, because I'd only done a handful of them whilst I was looking for a job. And the last few had rejected me, so I was expecting this one to go exactly the same, that they'd reject me as well. So, when I got, the interview went absolutely fine. I thought it was just like bog standard, regular sort of how the interview goes. Came out, said yeah, it went well, it went good, I think, I hope. They seemed very nice people, and all went well. And then I got an email that afternoon offering me the job. And I felt like crying. I felt like bawling. I was sat in the car with my very same mum that held me as I wept all those months ago as I got let go from the previous job. Sat in the car with her. We were driving somewhere. I don't know where we were going, but we were driving somewhere. And I opened that email and it said, "We're delighted to offer you the position." And I screamed. I probably gave my mum a heart attack because I screamed so loudly. But I couldn't believe that I'd done it, because I think for an initial point after receiving my diagnosis of autism, it kind of felt like I couldn't do anything, because it felt like I was being handed a disability and them sort of saying, here you go, you're not going to be capable for the rest of your life. Obviously it's not, and obviously autism is a disability, but it doesn't disable you, and you shouldn't let it disable you. But this just showed me that when I worked hard and I put effort in and I made that effort, it paid off. I got a bloody job. And I was so happy. I was so happy because it felt like my first proper job, because the jobs I'd had before were agency jobs. So even though they were jobs and I was going and I was getting paid and everything, blah, 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 I was getting pay slips, da, 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 it didn't feel like a proper job. But this was an NHS job. I work for the NHS. Crazy. Honestly, I felt like all my prayers had been answered, and this is the best possible scenario I could have possibly had. So, September 2024, I started the job. And fast forward nearly 2 years on now, and we're still here. And I love it. Honestly, best job I have ever had. And I'm not even just saying that to appease to my job or anything like that. It is the best job I have ever had, and I don't want to leave. And I don't, maybe I do get stressed, maybe I do get overworked, maybe I do have a lot on my plate. I wouldn't leave for the life of me. I like it. I really like it here, and the people are lovely. They're understanding. They get me. They know I'm autistic, all that stuff. It's fine. It's great, and it works out, and it's okay, and I feel okay. And I don't feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't feel uncomfortable, and I don't dread going to work every day. What more could you ask for? Just shut the blind behind me, the shutter behind me, because it was like blinding me, honestly, and I was like, Jesus is coming through. Honestly, it felt like Christ was arriving with us on this podcast. So yeah, that's pretty much been my life for the last couple of years. And in terms of how my job is going, if you care, if you're asking, if you're going on, how's the job going? It's going absolutely fine. Thank you so much for asking. I am loving it. I look forward to coming to work every day. I don't dread it. My colleagues are lovely. It's all smooth sailing from here. In terms of how I'm finding life as an autistic person over 2 years on from being diagnosed, I'd say I feel comfortable with it now. I'm not at ease with it. I don't feel like I fully understand myself yet. I think that's probably going to take a lifetime, if that, because I know there's people in their 40s and 50s that were diagnosed when they were a teenager, in their 20s, whatever, that still aren't fully there to grips with it. I know there's autistic content creators, I know there's autistic advocates and everything like that they admit that they still don't fully understand themselves. I think it probably is a massive learning curve, and it's never going to fully feel like I really understand myself, because as much as we can research into the autistic brain, and as much as we can dive into the way it makes us feel and the way it impacts us and the way it makes us communicate and do things and say things and whatever, it doesn't give us a sense of completion in how it defines us, and it doesn't stop that stigma around autism. And I think the only way that we can do that is by being honest about the way that it affects us. And I don't sugarcoat this when I open up to people about my autism, because I don't like to tell many people. I don't see it as something that is interesting about me, and I don't see it as something that I need to mention unless somebody really asks or I feel it's relevant. Like, I wouldn't walk up to somebody and say, "Hi, I'm autistic," something like that. The only reason I bring it up is if I feel it's relevant, because I think there's so many more things that are interesting about me. I have can't think of a single interesting thing about me. Oh god, this is going terribly. I have a dog. I love dogs. I'm a massive dog lover. Look at my tattoo. This is really bad for the visual. I have a dog tattoo, if you can't see that. If you're not watching this, if you're listening to this for context, I have a dog tattoo on my wrist. I have a dog. Her name's Ellie. I love to talk about her. Please ask me about her, because I love to talk about her. She's 8 years old. She'll be 9 in October. She's a Bichon Frise crossed with a Jack Russell, and she is the love of my life, and she is my best friend. I had a dog called Poppy. She passed away at the end of last year. You might have heard me talk about her before. She was my absolute best friend. She was my soul dog, and I miss her every single day of my goddamn life. Please ask me about her. I promise I won't cry. Maybe I will. I have a lot of favourite bands, a lot of favourite artists. I love going to concerts. I love comedy gigs. Please ask me about my favourite artists, my favourite bands, my favourite comedy gigs. Please ask me about my favourite band's album that came out last week. Please ask me about the band Camino. I love talking about the band Camino. Please ask me about Never Always 2, the album that came out 3 weeks ago, and I absolutely love it and I can't stop listening to it. Please ask me about The Lonely Island. Please ask me about Seth Meyers. Ask me about SNL. Ask me get complicated. Ask me about my interests. Ask me about New York, the t-shirt I'm wearing right now. Ask me about New York. Ask me about Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Ask me about The Big Bang Theory. Ask me about Casualty, which is an interest that I've only really developed in the last couple of years, probably. Ask me about Casualty. Ask me about things that I am interested in, and I'm interested in. Ask me about Coronation Street. I can definitely tell you what's going on there, because I watch it every single day of my goddamn life. Well, every day that it's on anyway. Ask me about podcasts. I love listening to podcasts. As much as I love making podcasts, I love listening to podcasts. I love driving. I love cars. Ask me about Cars. Not the film. Maybe ask me about the film too, which is coming back to cinemas for its 20-year anniversary. Ask me about Cars. Life is a highway. Honestly, see me at that cinema front row. Well, maybe not front row, because it's actually a terrible view at the front. But yeah, ask me about cars. Ask me about what car I drive. Ask me about the way I'm interested in cars and the cars I like and what my dream car is and things like that. Don't always assume that when somebody is disabled, that their disability is the only interesting thing about them, or it's the only thing about them. In fact, even if it's not interesting, even if you don't think it's interesting, even if you don't think it's pertinent, don't assume that a disabled person's identity is fully wrapped up in their disability, because I've spent the last couple of years, moments, feeling like I'm autistic and that's it, because the diagnosis affected me so much to the point where it made me feel like that was it now, and I was just going to feel that way for the rest of my life, and I was going to be completely overwhelmed by my autism. And I think through telling myself, through working on it, through opening up to other people about it, I've realised it's not overwhelming. It won't take over my life, and I can learn to live with it. And I've spent 20 years the first 20 years of my life not knowing about myself. Now I know. How can I use that to better understand myself, and how can I use that to progress further and make myself more comfortable? Be at home with myself almost, I think is the thing. It's a thing I'm really trying to work on. And I'll be completely open and honest with you. This is a safe space. I'm in therapy at the moment. And one of the things I'm trying to work on is being kinder to myself. And I think the reason I wanted to come back to this podcast is because I think talking about these things and being open, and even though I'm not physically talking to anybody when I'm doing this, I feel like I'm sharing it somewhere. It helps me. And as much as I hope it helps you, if you're listening to this and you've struggled with any of the things I've mentioned, I really hope that it helps you realise you're not alone. You are not the only person that's gone through this, and you're not the only person going through this. And it does get better. And there are ways to get better. And even on your worst day, you will have better ones. And you will start to feel okay. And being diagnosed autistic, ADHD, neurodivergent in general, does not define you and does not make you worse. It doesn't make you less advantaged. It doesn't make you any different than the person you already were. It just gives you a greater understanding, and it makes you able to be more okay with yourself and more at home with yourself is the main thing. So without keeping this episode too long, obviously because it's only an introductory kind of welcome back episode, I don't want to make it like an hour long. I don't know how long this episode is. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping it's not, because I don't want this to be like, oh god, are they still talking kind of thing. So I am going to wrap it up here, and I am just going to say, if you came back, thank you for coming back, thank you for waiting. I hope it was worth it. I do want to keep this kind of informal. It's just like we're having a chat, you know, grab your cup of tea, grab your beverage of choice, whatever that might be. I do also have water here. I do have several beverages on the go at any given opportunity, honestly. I do want it to feel a bit like we're on FaceTime, whatever. Even if you've just stuck this in your pocket and you're not even watching this, that's absolutely fine. Or if you just want to prop your phone up and watch this while whatever you're doing. I just hope it can provide you with some comfort, and it can make you feel a little bit better. And if you are going through any of the things I've talked about, experiencing any of the experiences I've had, I hope this can be of some comfort and some company for you, to make you realise that you are never alone in these situations, and that this podcast can be a sort of comfort blanket in that sense, or just a bit of company if you want a bit of white noise to fill the background, or if this helps you fall asleep. Anything like that. I don't know, I have been told in the past the sound of my voice puts people to sleep, so you know, change it up a bit monotone, aren't you? It's called autism. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. If you did, make sure you're following this page and you hit the bell so you get a notification every time a brand new episode of Tism Talks drops. And I will hopefully, you know, share this with your friends, share this with whoever you like, share it with your family, share it with whoever. Be like, Anya just came back to their podcast after 2 years. Woo woo! Yeah, share this with your friends, share this with your family, and I will hopefully see you very, very soon for another episode of Tism Talks. Bye bye!